Hey guys, Ivan Lima here. Today we will talk about instead of triggers. So we already talked about after, insert, after update, and after delete. The after insert was very detailed on how things work, so that the after update and after delete we didn't have to go so detailed because there's some things that are the same, right? For the instead of, we're gonna be a little detailed again. Okay, this is gonna be instead of for inserts, and we're gonna be a little detailed. But for the things that we talked about previously, we're not gonna mention it, well, we're gonna mention it, but we're not gonna explain much about it, right? So here I have the main things that we're going to be using. Some of them are very similar to what we already had previously. One is the error log. So I'm going to create that error log. And to know what I create this, go back to after insert video and you're going to see it. And I'm going to create the person table. And in this case, I don't need a person audit. Before we talk in person audit, because we're doing after insert, update, and delete, and they are good for auditing purposes. They could be used for something else, but in that scenario, we use for auditing purposes, right? In that case, it was for the person table. In this case here, for instead of, it's a little bit different, and we're going to see the use case scenarios in a bit. But the only thing different here, though, is the age, right? I say that the person to be inserted in the table, they must be at age, and it cannot be null, okay? This is a constraint that, in that case, I'm going to use to demonstrate how we can use instead insert for certain things. Before I explain more about it, instead of insert, I want to create those two triggers, one for the after insert and one for the instead of. If we see what's going to happen here now, it's going to be easier for me to explain, right? So just follow with me. I created that, and then I'm going to try to actually insert a record into the first name. As I can see here, I have a not null for age. So theoretically, if I try to insert something without an age, we would hope that would fail, right? But let's see what's going to happen here. So I've got nothing here for person. Oh, and I'm not showing things being created. So, but here it is. All the other things were created. And then I'm going to try to insert into this table. When I do that, look at that. It says that some roles were affected. It says that the trigger was fired. This one here, the instead of, but it doesn't give me a message for the after trigger. And if I come here to person table, let's see what is in there. Nothing. So I'm actually, it's kind of like saying that things, it's not saying that, but it makes me look, it makes it look like things worked, but it didn't work. Okay. And why is that? And this is the point that I want to get. Okay. To understand, instead of, I made it this way so we could see that this trigger here wasn't called. Which means, and if you remember, the after insert only happens after a insert was tried, right? In this case, it never happened, right? So the insert didn't happen. This here got executed first, and then it was done. It was like, no, I cannot do anything else. That tells me that instead of, maybe it should be named before because it kind of means the same thing in that case, right? It's just a way of saying, okay, I'm gonna do the work for the DML for you, okay? And you can do some type of validation before because I'm not gonna do that insert up until you explicitly tell me inside of this trigger. I might be calling sub procedure, I might be doing just a straight insert, and that's what we're gonna be doing later on. But that's what it does, right? Instead of does not execute the DML portion, it's just not gonna execute. Okay, so here we have that, right? So we know that that's what's going on. So now I want to see, we talked previously about the inserted virtual tables. We had inserted and deleted. In this case, here, this is an insert. I would expect to see something in here. Let's see if that is the case, right? So remember, I'm still not inserting anything into the table, right? I'm going to try to, but as we can see, things are not working as we want yet. So here we have the select start from person. Nothing is in there. I'm going to try to insert, and then I'm going to see some data in here, right? Where is that coming from? Coming from line 56, select start from inserted. So it's not coming from the person, right? And as you can see here, person ID is 0, which means that because it wasn't inserted, I don't have, and I'm using identity 11, right? It doesn't have a number. It's just coming the default as 0, okay? Then I have Ivan Lima. The age is null. And again, I remember that age cannot be null. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. All right. So, but then now we can see that we do have something in inserted. Maybe I have to use that in my advantage for the insert of instead of insert as. All right, so we're gonna do, okay, for this one here, I have this row count big. This is one thing that I like to use in most of my triggers. It's just, and we talked again about this previously, but it's just a way to say, hey, if I don't have any records inserted or modified or whatever it is, assigned to, do not continue with the triggers. We know triggers they can be expensive. We don't want to be executing things that we don't have to, right? So yeah, at the end of the day, this one is not really doing anything other than that. So if I actually run that and I try this, I'm still gonna see the message as only the instead of trigger being fired, and that's it. And I don't have anything in the person yet. Okay. So, well, I want to see then, because since I know that I have something inserted, and we talked about this being a virtual table there that run that it within the scope of the manipulation transaction that you're trying to do, and we have inserted and deleted, right? So can I actually make changes to this table then, to this virtual table? I don't know. Let's try it. Let's try to create a trigger here and see what happens. And look at that. Logical tables inserted and deleted cannot be updated. So no, here's your answer. We're not able to make any updates in this table. Okay. But, so it won't change anything here for now. Of course, I only have the message. But I can get that into a temp table. Can I? Let's try it. Right? And what we're doing here is pretty much this is what we're doing, right? I'm actually inserting things into this temp table, and then I'm gonna make an update for the age and make that equals to 0. This is actually bad right now. Okay, I'm just showing this for demonstration purpose, but we're gonna fix it later. But this is just so you see that we can maybe we'll see that as we run that we can do this update on the age on the temp table, right? In this case here, I would probably want to put a filter in case like age equals to null, but not yet, right? So let me run it. Okay, person is still nothing there, hopefully. And if I try to insert, well, I selecting from this temp table, right? So this is what we have in there. We still have the person ID equals to 0, but we have the age equals to 0. So this worked, right? So this worked. I was able to update things inside of my temp table. Now that I have data in the inserted table, what can I do? Well, why not use that to insert data, right? Into the main table. And that's what we're gonna do here, okay? And again, this is still not the best trigger yet. We're gonna get much better in a bit. All right, so in this case here, I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm selecting to the temp table. I'm doing an update. Look, I'm not using a filter, and then I'm doing insert into person. So look, my instead of will handle that manipulation. Okay, I could be calling a stored procedure here. I could be doing something else, but as long as you understand that this is the one that's going to handle, okay, which makes me think, okay, I mean, so there's some business logic could be in here, right? And that's kind of like what we want to try to avoid. So uh, we don't want a business logic, and but in what scenarios though we wouldn't need it, right? So let's say that I'm not in charge of creating the script that's going to do the inserts, updates, deletes, whatever it is. In that case, here's insert. I'm not the person in charge of that, or I don't even know if that's well, if it's in my database, it would be my system. But let's say that I'm just not the person in charge of, and I don't have contact with that person, so I'm not sure how that person is inserting things, right? Also, maybe when someone calls a stop procedure, because we know that if in a stop procedure, if the parameter uh, doesn't specify as not null, or sorry, as null, or it gives a default value to it, we know that it's gonna fail, right? So maybe if I'm gonna call stop procedure here, I could maybe handle that type of calling and then send the stop procedure through here and then call it and insert to whatever I need to do, right? But that's still not what I want to talk about. The sub procedure itself could do the validation of what it's coming in, right? So let's say that I don't accept age equals to null. I could in the sub procedure do that. And that's the proper place to do it, not in a trigger. But sometimes it's out of our control, okay? And age, of course, is a very silly example here, but that might be a scenario out there where you have a type of constraint that it cannot be validated through the process of DDL, or even through the DML using stored procedures and things like that. Then you could use that in here, okay, to make that, to enforce that constraint before it does the insert. Okay, one good scenario where we could maybe see that, and that it's something that you could see, it's for data migration. And I'm talking about data migration from systems that you don't have control of. Okay, it's not data migration from an ETL process where you kind of know where things are, how things are coming. I'm talking about, let's say that you're doing a data migration from an old legacy system to a new system, and in that old legacy, which you don't have access, you have some data, for example, age. You expect an age to be populated, but it's not populated there. It's coming as null, right? Then you could say, you know what? I'm gonna create instead of trigger right here, so that whenever they try to insert, whenever things happen, I'm gonna validate this first so that it doesn't fail, and then I'm gonna put whatever value I want to put in there, right? And then deal with that value later on. Do see what I want to do in my store procedure or whatever, right? Or also in scenarios where maybe the data is coming from insert from us, from some ORM, right? Or just straight insert from the code in C Sharp and Java and Python. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Those are the type of things that sometimes just don't have the control of. And if we don't have the control and those are causing issues, maybe this is the place to use. Sorry, talked a little bit about that, but that's important to understand, okay? Because we don't want to be in the business of doing business rules instead of, unless we really have to, okay? In fact, this type of trigger, we don't create a whole lot, but it's good to know, because if we have to create, that's great. But also, if you see one, you know exactly what's happening there or why things are not behaving maybe the way you expect, right? Especially when you do an insert and things doesn't insert and there's no error, there's nothing showing you there, right? Okay, so all right, so knowing that, let's run this. And then I'm going to do this person. I already had one. Oh, I don't have anyone in there. Is this gonna work? Let's see if this will work. I thought I had someone in there previously, but maybe not. All right, so you see that things worked as we expected because those two triggers were fired. And if I come here to person, the person is in there. And this time, we have a person ID because it was created. It was, I'm actually selecting from the current table, right? But I have one problem here. Right now, again, I'm just inserting all the values into the inserted table, and then I'm updating everyone, and that's probably not what I want to do, right? I want to do that for age, where age equals to null only. And that's what I'm going to try to do here. And this is going to be the last trigger. Okay, so let me open this a little bit more so we can see. All right, so I don't have much changes here. So this we already talked about. This one here is only for debugging purposes. I will take this out in production, right? Then we already have all this. I don't need this line here that I have this break here, because for audit, maybe I would need this, but this is only if I want to action. As we saw in the previous video, action was used for person audit, which is not the case here. So I'm removing that. And the process I care, right? Because I still could have a failure happening inside of this trigger, right? And if that's the case, I want to catch it and know that in my table. That's why I error message here, right, with the process. So now, if there's any error that happens around here, then this will be, I'll know where to go to, right? Okay, and then I'm doing that. I'm doing the select into the inserted. Remember that records, not only it could have a set of records, not only a single record, could have both, right? So this is this can hold multiple records. So I'm inserting all into a temp table, and then I'm saying, hey, if we have any data into the inserted table, if we don't have it, sorry, then return it, right? Again, why? Because I already did a lot. Look at this. I did a select in here. I did some other things here, right? I don't want to do anything else if there's no data in here, right? So just return, done, good to go. Otherwise, we're gonna try and catch, right? We're gonna try and catch um, what we need to do, right? And what we're gonna try is we're gonna say, hey, let me see if there's anything, any data in this inserted temp table where age is null, which is what I do not allow in my table, right? Yeah, if it exists, then make sure and set age equals to 0. Okay, that was my business rule for now. Like, if it's no, then set it to 0, right? And everything else, leave it alone, right? So in this case here, I'm only updating what the ones that are no, okay? And then after that, I insert into person based on my template, okay? So let's run this. Then we're gonna have the, so we have one person inserted there, right? Now I'm gonna use an insert without an age, so I'm not passing the age, okay? Is that gonna work? Well, look, those two triggers were called. So if I come here, oh, not this. If I come here, I'll see that the second one also worked, right? This one was inserted, okay? Even though I had no age in here. This other one here that I'm gonna insert right now has an age, 20, okay? And for that one, oh, I actually want to talk about one thing. Let's check the execution plan. Well, let's see if this one here was actually inserted, and we see that it was inserted. But I want to come back here, and I'm going to change this a little bit. I'm going to put two A's in here. I want to add insert again, and I want to check the execution plan. It's already selected there. So let me do this, and we can see that how many things are getting executed. One single insert just because of that instead of. And we also saw the same in the after insert, right? So sometimes when we see a bunch of things getting in the execution plan, even though we only do in one single statement, it's probably because there's a trigger, or it could be index view. There are things that you have to look around, right? So here you can see that we have like one, two, three, four. Oh, how many again? We have one, two, three, four, five, six, and you can see what they are, right? This is just trying to insert into the person, right? But it's just passing the parameters, but it's not even trying, not even getting inserted yet. This is the what we have inside of the trigger. This is what we have inside of the trigger. This is also what we have inside of the trigger. And we have the update inside of the trigger because this one is a 0, right? We have an age that is 0. It's no doing the update, and then it actually does the actual insert, right? Okay. Let's check the other one. This one had 6. This one here should have one less, meaning we don't have the update, right? Because the update doesn't happen. Why? Because we don't have any age equals to 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as you can see, there's no update here, right? And that's the reason why, because you didn't have to execute that portion of the query, of the trigger, right? And this one here is just pretty much the same as the first one, but this one I'm specifying age and passing null. And even though I don't accept null in my table, things are gonna work just fine. As I can see there, things are getting inserted with the value that I need. So that's how instead of should be used, and that's how we can see that. It's good to know this because yes, I guarantee you're gonna see some of those out there. The only problem is that when developers try to make things fancy using this when it shouldn't. It should be very straightforward for a specific reason, and we have to have a really good reason to use this. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks. Check the other videos to know more about all the other details.